Right, so I'm going to take a little bit of a different approach in trying to bring to us a perspective that really focuses on our organizations. And I'm going to start with a very simple premise that people are counting on you. How often do you think about that? How often do you think about in the position and what that is in service to within your organization, to our patients? Because people are counting on us. The question I have for you is our organization, are your organizations built and teams built to the effect that they're willing to overcome whatever challenge they face, that the team will face, because there will be many? Do they have the perseverance, the grit, the attitude necessary to meet the needs of our patients? Now, surely the concept of people counting on us is not new to any of us. Right? As children, our parents counted on us to brush our teeth at night, wash behind our ears, play nice with one another. As we get older and we get to enjoy the athletics and team sports, our coaches and teammates counted on us to defend our man, to do our job, to make the free throw, kick the game-winning field goal. For me, it was more of make sure the towels and water bottles are always ready and full for when the team comes in. That's supposed to be funny. Thank you. More in the bench. But as an adult, right, we have our spouses, our children, sounds that are counting on us, to be home on time for dinner, to take our children to their events. And in some cases, nowadays with the generation, it's to provide a roof, 3 square meals a day until they're 35. Okay, but the concept of being counted on is something that we take seriously. And in those scenarios, none of us are afraid of what it means to be counted on. And the answer to that question, and to the reason why we're not, is because we love those that are counting on us. We know that we may not meet the expectations, but we know that we're trying to do our best, and we'll work to do our best every time to make up for that. So that leads into the conversation with the introduction a little bit about Dendreon. Okay, so Dendreon's history has some great stories, some not so great, and then a recovery. Think about the beginning. Dendreon was the first to develop and commercialize an active cellular immunotherapy from a patient's own cells. That product is called Provenge. It was approved by FDA in 2010, and it's for the treatment of prostate cancer. And it's also based on survival data, the first immunotherapy to be based on such information. So great stuff. But we're also the first company with an approved commercial immunotherapy to miss its forecast. The first one to watch its stock go to pennies on the dollar. And maybe one of the first to also go bankrupt. Okay? And that all happened in an 8-year period. You throw in there leadership changes. You throw in there acquisitions by 2 different companies. It's been trying. But the story, the good news in terms of the rebound, is that Dendreon's not just surviving, it's thriving. Okay? And it will continue to do so because of the belief in the product and the belief in what we do and what we have to fight for, and that's for our patients. Now, there are 3 core values that I believe are also paramount to the success of Dendreon, its recovery, and what I believe to be just a continued extended future for all of us. And that's fighting for what matters. That's rising to the occasion and acting as one. And I'm going to go over each of those here in a bit. But they're the premise by which our company is based and the principles and values that our employees really believe and thrive on. Now, rather than trying to dissect how that applied to Dendreon, I figured I'd pick a different example and show the relevance and how anyone can adopt these values. And it really starts with an example of something that occurred nearly 50 years ago. Everyone's familiar with Apollo 13, right? And the events that related to it. Obviously, there's been lots of theatrical renditions that went with it. But Apollo 13, its mission was to be the third vessel to place man on the moon, to look at a region of the moon, Mare Aurora, something like that, sector of the moon that had never been researched. We all know that that didn't happen. They began with 3 core objectives. The first was to land on the moon and explore this territory. The second, to continue to demonstrate the dominance of the U.S. space. And the third was to get their people home. So how quickly did the first 2 go by the wayside and focused on the third? So they had challenges they had never actually had prepared for. There's no simulator, situation for that. And so when you think about the principles and the values that I mentioned, let's break them down one by one. And you think about rising to the occasion as it relates to the team in Houston, right? Think about Houston as being us, the providers, our healthcare providers, and the astronauts as being our patients. So in terms of rising to the occasion, you had a team that really had to overcome multitude of obstacles. Obstacles that, again, I mentioned, never prepared for. And they did so in a way that provided comfort to those 250,000 miles away. Think about 3 astronauts all by themselves floating in space, relying on the team down in Houston, working to get them home. The second, in terms of fighting for what matters. If you've seen the movie, there's a popular line in there in which failure is not an option. And when you look at what that means, you had teams that were vehemently sharing their perspectives, their thoughts, coming together in the interest of those 3 men. They didn't agree, but they had the opportunity to hear one another, to be included, and then ultimately decisions made. But they fought for getting those 3 men. It was all in service to one thing. And then acting as one. There was the flight director, Gene Kranz. He had the decision-making authority. Everyone realized it. But everyone also knew that he would hear them, and he would do what he thought was best based on the input from his team. So truly an inclusive model where everyone had the ability to stand up, to present themselves, to be heard, and then ultimately know that when that decision was made, there was no discussion, no debate later on, and there would never have been any, if things didn't turn out the way that they did, any finger pointing. So the importance of rising to the occasion, fighting for what matters, act as one, should be paramount for all of us because our patients are counting on us in that regard. So ultimately, this then comes down to, well, then what is success? What does success look like? How many of you realize that in the event of Apollo 13, that there was actually a record that was established, the furthest that man has actually traveled from the Earth, nearly 250,000 miles. Because you remember they had to slingshot him around the moon, and based on its orbital path, nobody's been out there any further since. Sounds like a piece of success as well, but it wasn't what was intended. So, John Wooden, wonderful basketball coach from UCLA, defined success as a peace of mind that can only be achieved through the self-satisfaction of recognizing that one's own effort matched what he or she is capable of doing. And to me, that's what will define the success for our patients. We will get products to market. We will deliver them. We need people with the mindset that really focuses more on the fact that, am I putting forth the effort, my best effort that I'm capable of every day? Because that's what they're counting on. Elizabeth Gilbert. She's the author of Eat, Pray, Love. That novel is what gave her is what's made her famous. Prior to that, failure after failure after failure after failure. Success. Set her up for success the next book, right? No. Failure, failure, failure. But it really comes down to then what is failure, right? Because the world defines it as being a very negative aspect piece. But failure is still the opportunity to learn, still the opportunity to impress upon our folks the passion that needs to be displayed every day in our work, because we will not succeed the way we think we should or could. Every experiment is a good experiment, regardless of the outcome. It took Edison 1,000 times experiments before he came up with the light bulb. Were all 1,000 failures? Each one got him a step closer to ultimately building the light bulb. So, Ms. Lambert also has a perspective that when you look at success and failure, each end of the spectrum requires us, to return to home. And what's home? Home is that place where the thing or the person that you love more than yourself. And I go back to what has defined Dendreon success and its return to success over the last several years, is the fact that it's returned to its home. It's understood that we continue to focus on something more than ourselves, and that's our patients. And that's what we all need to do. When you think about also success, it's really dependent on our ability to reveal and not conceal, right? How do we continue to collaborate and share across the industry so that we're not giving away trade secrets? I get that, but how do we ultimately overcome obstacles that we've all incurred, and how do we help our people be in a position for them to succeed? Science opens the door to opportunity, but it's our people and our willingness to reveal rather than conceal that'll push us into the room for success. Thank you.